And I submit to you, King Fahd, that if the sands of time give us any hint of the future, it is that in the days ahead, the friendship between the Saudi Arabian and American people will be a strong and vital force in the world.
Okay, family, before I explain what's going on, I'm going to do just a little bit of a history lesson so we can all grasp and have an understanding of what's happening. So, the financial system of this earth operates on a lot on what's known as commodities. Commodities are, things that are traded, such as grain, wheat, those types of things, gold, silver. But when we look at how the whole world financial system currently is set up right now, the biggest commodity of all is oil. And that oil, that commodity is governed, I should say, or operates predominantly by the what's known as the petrodollar, which is the U.S. currency. And so when a young Saudi Arabia had struck oil about 75 years ago, they started to become one of the main suppliers of oil to the rest of the world. Under the Nixon administration, when they devised the plan in Bretton Woods to make the US dollar the most dominant, or what you can say the reserve currency in the earth, this was done by striking a deal about 50 years ago with the Saudis. And this agreement would say that the Saudis would produce oil and they would sell that oil to any nation that wanted to buy oil only using the US dollar. In this way, the Saudis were promised protection by the United States, as well as arming them militarily. So this agreement was made, it was actually initially made in secret. Nixon and someone else, I forgot the name of the person, flew to Saudi Arabia, and they actually met on a naval ship where the secret agreement was made. And so, with that being the case, the petrodollar was born, and in this way, of course, Saudi Arabia became vastly wealthy, and the U.S. was able, through its central banking system, its SWIFT system, and its ability to print money, became the world's reserve currency. So, no matter what country you were, where you were born or whatever, even if it had its own currency, when you thought about what it would be referred to as money, the only thing that would come to your mind would be the US dollar. But let's kind of step back a little bit and to understand how this happened, because after World War II, um, the United States was basically what you would call the only or the leading superpower at that time, and coming forward. And so, of course, later we would have the rise of the Soviet Union, but for the most part, it was the United States. And the key thing to do would be to, of course, elicit the rise of what you would call trade between countries. And in order for that to happen, countries needed to have, needed to be need to, sorry, countries needed to be able to trade um, using a simplified way, or what you would call, a currency that would basically be used for everything. Of course, that was the dollar. And of course, the just kind of saying, the country that would be able to put themselves in that position would be the one that would be able to benefit from everything that is traded, and benefit by every economic change that would go forward, whether it's in industry or in production, in all things. And this is where the dollar set the United States in a position to be that nation. Right. So getting back to what I was saying, so countries would, of course, be looking to a currency that they felt was stable, and this is where they, of course, most places would start to trade more using the U.S. dollar. The other thing, though, is that with the U.S. being a superpower, it created in secret with the Saudis another superpower, and that was the ability to take control of what provided energy, right? Which is the elephant in the room, and that is oil. So once that secret arrangement was made with the Saudis by the U.S. when they sent Nixon, the U.S. basically took control of all energy exchange, energy production, and energy sale basically across the whole earth. And its currency became the only currency that would be accepted for the purchase of that energy, which was oil. So basically, if any country, once that secret agreement was made, wanted to purchase oil, they had to get their hands on U.S. dollars. And so, if any of those countries tried to purchase oil in any other way, they would have to, meet the wrath of what they refer to as sanctions. So countries were forced, of course, to operate by buying their energy resources by U.S. dollars. So this, in turn, also impacted the value of currencies in those countries, because everything of then, of course, would be valued against the U.S. dollar. So if the U.S. wanted to sanction a country, that would also put it in a situation where its local currency would become weaker against the dollar, and can make it the situation very financially unstable in that said country. So this arrangement with the Saudis gave the United States complete dominance over what they refer to as global trade, and whether you liked it or not, kept the U.S. dollar. It's in the position of the reserve currency for every country on the entire earth. But what has happened through time? What has happened through time is that the U.S. has used this position of dominance to destroy countries at its will. Whether the countries that they did not agree with, they would sanction them. Of course, they later developed what's known as the SWIFT system, and a powerful central banking system. You'll find central banks in almost every country. The only country that is not a part of the world central or the U.S. central banking system is Russia, that has its own central bank separate from every other country. And I think either Hungary or Bulgaria is the other. I'm not quite sure, but definitely Russia. So in doing so, if anyone did not do the bidding of the U.S., whether it's through world trade, whether it's through whatever it may be, they would be sanctioned. The SWIFT system is the system through which all financial transactions move and operate to the bank and central banking system and the U.S. banking system. So if you're sanctioned out of the SWIFT system, you could basically just call it a day. You're not able to do anything, and you also would have no access to U.S. dollars. So how does it work? So you'll find that a lot of countries, whether it's like a Japan, South Korea, China, and so on and so forth, would over the years would buy up what you call as U.S. Treasuries. What would put the U.S. in a unique position, because it being the world's reserve currency, it would be its ability to print money. And so it would print money, that money which in a sense would be issued as debt through treasury bills or treasury bonds, would be bought up by other countries such as China, South Korea, Russia, other countries, India. And when those bonds matured, of course, those bonds are seen as debt. So when those bonds matured, then those countries would call in those bonds and they would be paid. And so this system. So with the dollar being the reserve currency, that means that dollars would flow out of the U.S. into other countries, and dollars would flow back in, because energy in particular, the most important thing, you couldn't be purchased without the use of U.S. dollars. And so what happened going forward is that we saw that there are countries, I think in the past, I call it 15, 20 years, such as Venezuela, Libya, and Iraq, made decisions that they would no longer sell oil and require that oil be purchased in U.S. dollars. We're not going to get into that, but we see what happened to those nations. But, the ball had already began to roll. The plan was already afoot. And so what happened this past, on the 9th, a few days ago, at midnight, it was not reported until about almost 2 days later. The Saudis refused to renew this relationship with the United States. The Saudis, being the world's largest producer of oil, right, now have set the stage that the U.S. is no longer seen as the world reserve currency. And people are free to buy oil from them either using currently the yuan, the Chinese yuan, or the euro. And in some cases, once Saudi Arabia is accepted into BRICS, which we'll get into that at another time, that may change to countries being able to purchase oil in their own local currency, which would then be converted to probably into BRICS currency at some point later on. But what are the ramifications of this? The ramifications are beyond what anyone realizes. So this means that other countries, right? The U.S. would no longer be able to dictate to other countries what currency they can use to buy oil, because this agreement was exclusively between the U.S. and the Saudis, not between the U.S. and anyone else. So it basically changes the game for everyone else that wants to buy energy. Outside of that, there will be less inflows of dollars coming back into the U.S., which means that within the U.S. economy, inflation will increase. There will be hyperinflation, right? Everyone will see everything become incredibly expensive in a very short period of time, right? It will also mean that if the U.S. goes to the Saudis, because they've announced that they are not going to use it, that they will accept yuan or euros, that the U.S. may be prevented from buying oil from the Saudis using U.S. dollars. So the implications of this are vast. And so since this is the power behind the hegemony of the U.S., a rat that is cornered is going to fight, right? It becomes very dangerous. And so we can expect that this is not going to take place without a fight. And the question is, what's that fight going to be? But we'll see. We'll see already the things that are happening. The Saudis are about to sign a military alliance, they said, with the Russians. And we have seen, as I covered on a previous video, that, you know, the Russians have sent 3 of their more advanced warships to Cuba, to include what is being reported as 1 submarine. But I'm going to put forth to you that based on my research, one of the ships that were sent to Cuba is considered one of the most advanced warships in the Russian fleet. And that ship is always accompanied and tailed by at least 5 nuclear submarines. So there's more going on than we realize. So just stay tuned, family. We're going to, I'll continue to keep you updated and let you know what's going on. But I'm saying to you, for those of you that are still in the US or, you know, so-called Western nations, get yourself ready for change, right? Get yourself ready for change. Any dollars that you have, put them into some type of commodity such as gold or silver. Or you may want to seek to ask the Most High to guide you to leave. For those that are not in the States and have already left, you're in Al-Kebulon, aka Africa, I'm going to suggest to you that if you have US dollars, you make a change. Put it into some commodities such as gold or such as silver, or convert it into your local currency. All right, family, that is it for this update. I'll see you on the next one. Salema.